Isabella's wine glass paused halfway to her lips as the waiter approached their table. Something in his eyes made her instincts scream danger, the same survival instinct that had kept her alive for 10 years at the top of a blood-soaked empire. She'd recognized fear in 1,000 faces, but this was different. This was recognition. The young man's hand trembled as he reached for the wine bottle, and his gaze kept darting toward the entrance, where Julian's family driver stood waiting by the coat check. Except that wasn't Giuseppe, their usual driver. The build was wrong. The stance was wrong. And when the man turned his head, Isabella saw the edge of a tattoo on his neck, 3 stars in a triangle. Bratva. Her heart didn't race. It went cold and deadly calm. She watched the waiter's hand slip into his apron pocket, then emerge empty. He was deciding something. In that split second, Isabella calculated every exit, every potential threat, every person in the dining room who could be compromised. When the waiter leaned down to pour Julian's wine, his lips barely moved as he whispered 2 words that confirmed her worst nightmare. Run now. If you want to discover how the most feared woman in the criminal underworld survived her own assassination and what happened after that desperate warning, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every view helps bring more stories like this one. Let's see how Isabella's empire nearly crumbled in one deadly night. Isabella Reyes hadn't become the Viper by trusting anyone. At 32, she controlled 3 states' worth of territory, commanded the loyalty of over 200 soldiers, and had politicians, judges, and corporate executives in her pocket. She'd inherited the Reyes cartel at 22 when rival families murdered her father and both her brothers in a coordinated strike. Everyone expected the organization to collapse. Instead, Isabella consolidated power with surgical precision, eliminated every conspirator, and expanded operations beyond anything her father had imagined. But power came with isolation. No friends. No normal life. No one who saw her as anything but a monster or a meal ticket. Until Julian Marcetti walked into her life 6 months ago at a charity gala, not knowing who she was, treating her like a woman instead of a weapon. His family owned legitimate businesses, hotels, restaurants, real estate development. Old money, respectable. Everything she'd never been. When he proposed 3 weeks ago, she'd seen a chance at redemption. A way to build something that wasn't soaked in blood. Tonight was supposed to be her introduction to his world. Dinner at Castello Bianco, the crown jewel of the Marcetti restaurant empire, with Julian's parents and his younger brother Gabriel. She'd worn Valentino instead of her usual tactical black, left her weapon in the car, smiled through his mother's thinly veiled comments about her import business. She should have known better. The waiter, Thomas, according to his name tag, was still standing beside her, his whole body rigid with terror. Isabella's eyes flicked to the false driver again, then back to Julian's father, who was checking his watch with barely concealed nervousness. Down, she said quietly, grabbing Thomas's wrist and pulling him toward the floor just as the first explosion tore through the restaurant's front entrance. The blast wave shattered every window facing the street. Crystal glasses exploded into shrapnel. The beautiful Art Deco chandelier crashed down onto the table where Julian's mother had been sitting seconds before. Isabella felt the heat wash over her back as she hauled Thomas toward the kitchen, her body moving on pure combat instinct while her mind cataloged everything in frozen clarity. Julian was still at the table. He'd stood up when she moved, confusion on his face turning to horror as he looked toward the entrance. The second explosion came from the wine cellar stairs, a shaped charge meant to collapse the most obvious escape route. Whoever planned this knew the building's layout perfectly. Isabella. Julian's voice cut through the screaming and the ringing in her ears. She turned to see him stumbling toward her through the smoke, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. The kitchen now. She reached for him, but Thomas yanked her back with surprising strength as automatic gunfire ripped through the dining room. The false driver and 3 other men had entered through the destroyed front entrance, weapons raised, firing methodically at anything that moved. Julian went down. So did his parents. Isabella watched it happen in the space of 2 heartbeats, her fiancé's body jerking as rounds tore through him, his father trying to shield his mother and failing, both of them collapsing into the wreckage of their elegant table setting. Move! Thomas shoved her through the kitchen doors. The staff was already fleeing through the back exit into the alley. Isabella's mind shifted from shock to survival mode. Her car was parked 2 blocks away, armored SUV with run-flat tires and bulletproof glass. She just had to reach it. They burst into the alley as gunfire erupted behind them. Thomas grunted and stumbled, then grunted again. When Isabella grabbed his arm to steady him, her hand came away slick with blood. "I'm fine," he gasped, but he wasn't. 2 holes in his back, blood soaking through his white server's shirt. He'd put himself between her and the shooters without hesitation. 2 blocks north, Isabella said, supporting his weight as they ran. Black Escalade. Stay with me. Her phone was already in her hand, speed dialing her security chief. Code red.
Castello Bianco.
Multiple hostiles. Send the cavalry to my location. She gave the coordinates as they rounded the corner, Thomas's breathing getting more labored with each step. The Escalade's lights flashed as she hit the remote. She practically threw Thomas into the back seat and slid behind the wheel just as the first shooter appeared at the mouth of the alley. Bullets sparked off the reinforced frame as she floored it, tires screaming. Thomas made a wet, pained sound behind her. Hold on, Isabella said, checking the rearview mirror. No pursuit yet, but they'd be coming. Just hold on. I've got you. Julian's face flashed in her mind, his smile, his stupid proposal on one knee in his family's garden, the way he'd looked at her like she was someone worth saving.
Gone.
All of it gone. She pressed harder on the accelerator and drove toward the only place left that was safe, the medical facility she'd built for exactly this kind of emergency. The one Julian never knew existed. The facility was hidden in plain sight, a private clinic in Brooklyn Heights that officially treated wealthy patients seeking discretion for cosmetic procedures. In reality, Dr. Navarro and his team had patched up more bullet wounds than facelifts. They were waiting when Isabella screeched into the underground parking garage, Thomas barely conscious in the back seat. 2 GSWs to the back, through and through by the look of it, Isabella said as they loaded him onto a gurney. He's lost a lot of blood. Dr. Navarro was already assessing the damage, barking orders to his nurses. We've got him. Go clean up. You're covered in blood, and you need to make calls. Isabella looked down at her Valentino dress, now ruined with Thomas's blood and smoke damage. She'd been so focused on getting them here alive that she hadn't noticed. In the secure changing room, she stripped off the evidence of the evening and stood under scalding water, watching red swirl down the drain. Julian's face kept appearing every time she closed her eyes. When she emerged in tactical clothing, her second-in-command Victor was waiting with a tablet and a grim expression. The restaurant's all over the news. 12 dead, including the Marcetti family. They're calling it a gas explosion, but we both know better. Show me what you found. Isabella took the tablet, her jaw tight. Julian's phone records. Victor pulled up the data. He made 17 calls to his brother Gabriel in the past week. The last one was 3 hours before dinner. But here's what's interesting, no calls to his parents. Not a single one in 2 weeks. And his calendar shows he tried to cancel tonight's dinner 4 times. Isabella studied the screen, her mind racing. He knew something was wrong. Maybe. But look at this. Victor swiped to a new document. We pulled security footage from the restaurant's backup server before the cops could get to it. Watch the family's arrival. The video showed Julian's parents entering with Gabriel, all smiles. But Julian arrived separately, 20 minutes later, looking tense. When his mother greeted him, he pulled away from her embrace. The body language was all wrong. He suspected them, Isabella said quietly. He didn't know what, but he suspected. There's more. Victor's expression darkened. Our source in the NYPD says the bomb squad found military-grade C4. Russian manufacture. And the shooters left one man alive. He's already asked for a lawyer, some high-priced attorney who represents the Volkov Bratva. The name hit Isabella like a physical blow. Dmitry Volkov. The man who'd been trying to move into her territory for 3 years. The man who'd sent her father's severed finger in a box after the assassination. The Mercedes made a deal with Volkov, she said, her voice cold as winter. Kill me, and he gets my operations. They get legitimacy and political cover for the transition. That's our assessment. Victor paused. Boss, if Julian didn't know.
He didn't.
Isabella's throat tightened. He proposed to me thinking he was saving me from that life. Instead, his family used him as bait. Through the observation window, she could see the surgical team working on Thomas. The boy who'd risked everything to warn her. Who'd taken bullets meant for her back. Find out everything about that waiter, Isabella said. And get me a full workup on Gabriel Marcetti. If he's calling his brother 17 times, there's a reason. She'd lost Julian. But she'd be damned if she'd let his family's treachery go unanswered. Thomas woke on the third day, his eyes snapping open with the panicked clarity of someone who'd been shot before. Isabella was sitting in the chair beside his bed, reading through intelligence reports on her tablet. She'd spent the past 72 hours there, sleeping in shifts, refusing to leave until she knew he'd survive. Easy, she said as he tried to sit up. You took 2 rounds through the back. Dr. Navarro says you're lucky they missed your spine by less than an inch. Thomas's hand went to the bandages, his breathing shallow. The restaurant. Julian.
Dead.
Along with his parents. Isabella set the tablet aside. You saved my life, Thomas Rivera. I've had my people looking into you. 24 years old, 3 jobs, no criminal record. You were studying pre-med at Columbia before you dropped out 2 years ago. She paused. Around the same time your sister was killed. His face went pale, then hard. How do you know about Sophia? Because I know everything about the people in my life. And you're in my life now, whether you planned it or not. Isabella leaned forward. What I don't know is why you recognized that driver. Why you risked your life to warn me. Thomas was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ceiling. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. Sophia was 19. She worked at a bodega in Washington Heights, saving money for nursing school. 3 years ago, some men came in demanding protection money. The owner refused. They shot him, shot Sophia, when she tried to call 911. The police said it was a robbery gone wrong. But it wasn't.
No.
Thomas's hands clenched into fists. I saw the security footage before the cops made it disappear. One of the shooters had a tattoo on his neck, 3 stars and a triangle. I spent months researching that symbol. It's Bratva, Volkov family mark. His eyes met Isabella's. I've been looking for them ever since. Working jobs near places they operate, watching faces, memorizing their soldiers. When I saw that driver at the restaurant, I knew what was coming. Isabella felt something click into place. This wasn't just a civilian who got caught in crossfire. This was someone who understood loss, who'd been hunting the same enemy from the shadows while she ruled from her throne. The Volkovs killed my father and brothers 10 years ago, she said. They've been trying to kill me ever since. They almost succeeded 3 days ago because Julian's family made a deal with them. Thomas absorbed this. So what happens now? You hide me somewhere, and I go back to being nobody. That depends. Isabella stood, walking to the window, overlooking the city. I could set you up with a new identity, money, protection. You'd be safe. You could finish medical school, live a normal life. She turned back to him. Or you could stay.
Work for me.
Help me destroy the people who killed your sister and tried to kill us both. Why would you trust me?
Thomas asked.
You don't know me. You took 2 bullets for a stranger. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. Isabella moved closer to his bed. The Volkovs think they won. They think I'm broken, that my organization will collapse now that my path to legitimacy is dead. But they made a mistake. They left me alive. And now I'm going to make them regret it. Thomas was quiet for a moment, then extended his hand. When do we start? Isabella took it, her grip firm. As soon as you can walk. Victor returned 6 days later with a file thick enough to be a novel. Isabella sat in her office at the facility, Thomas across from her in a wheelchair despite Dr. Navarro's orders to stay in bed. The kid was stubborn.
She respected that.
Gabriel Marcetti, Victor said, dropping the file on the desk. 28 years old, Harvard MBA, worked in the family's real estate division. Clean record, no ties to organized crime that we can find. But here's where it gets interesting. He pulled out surveillance photos. These were taken 2 weeks ago at the Marcetti estate in Westchester. The images showed Gabriel arguing with his father in the garden, his face twisted in anger. Another showed him being physically restrained by 2 men Isabella recognized as Volkov soldiers. Our source inside the estate says Gabriel found out about the assassination plan 5 days before the dinner. He tried to warn Julian, called him 17 times. When Julian wouldn't listen, thought his brother was being paranoid about their parents, Gabriel tried to stop it directly. Confronted his father. Victor tapped another photo. That's when the Volkovs stepped in. They're holding him, Isabella said, studying the pictures. Gabriel looked thinner than he had at the restaurant, hollow-eyed. Why not just kill him? Leverage. Gabriel controls 40% of Marcetti Industries through his mother's trust. His parents controlled 30%. Julian had 30%. With Julian and his parents dead, Gabriel inherits their shares. That's 60% total. Victor leaned forward. The Volkovs can't legally access those assets without Gabriel's cooperation. Right now, they're keeping him locked in the East Wing, forcing him to sign documents transferring control. Thomas spoke up, his voice still rough. If he opposed the hit, why didn't he go to the police? Because he's a Marcetti, Isabella said. You don't bring law enforcement into family business, even when family is trying to commit murder. It's not how their world works. She looked at Victor. What else? Our tech team hacked his laptop. Found encrypted files, messages to Julian detailing everything, the Volkov meetings, the money transfers, the timeline. He was documenting the conspiracy. Victor pulled up the screen on his tablet. Last entry was the morning of the dinner. Called Jay again. He won't listen. Says I'm paranoid, that mom and dad would never hurt Isabella. I'm going to the estate tonight. If something happens to me, this file goes to the FBI. But it didn't go to the FBI, Thomas said. Because the Volkovs grabbed him first. He's been dark ever since. Victor closed the tablet. Boss, this could be a play. The Volkovs could be using Gabriel, feeding us this information to draw you out. That's what I'd do, Isabella admitted. She stood, pacing to the window. Gabriel had tried to save Julian, had tried to stop the massacre. And now he was a prisoner in his own home, being forced to legitimize the theft of his family's empire. The same empire that had tried to kill her. He's still a Marcetti, Victor warned. His parents ordered your death. His family money funded those explosives. His brother proposed to me, Isabella countered. His brother died thinking he was building something good. She turned back to face them. And Gabriel tried to stop it. That has to count for something. Thomas met her eyes. So what do we do? Isabella made her decision. We find a way to contact him. If he's really a prisoner, he'll have information we need about Volkov operations, their security, their plans. And if this is a trap, she smiled, cold and dangerous. Then we spring it on our terms. You're going to rescue a Marcetti, Victor said flatly.
No, Isabella corrected.
I'm going to rescue someone who tried to save the man I loved. There's a difference. The message arrived 3 days later through the most unlikely channel possible. Harrison Whitmore, the Marcetti family's attorney for 30 years. He walked into Isabella's office unannounced, escorted by two very nervous security guards, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Ms. Reyes," he said, setting the briefcase on her desk with the careful formality of a man who'd spent his life managing other people's secrets. "I represent Gabriel Marcetti. Or rather, I did represent his family. Now I'm here because a young man I've known since he was 8 years old asked me to risk everything to deliver this to you." Isabella studied him carefully. Whitmore was in his 60s, silver-haired, impeccably dressed. The kind of lawyer who made problems disappear with phone calls and perfectly worded contracts. "Why would you betray your clients?" "Because my clients are dead. And because the people holding Gabriel prisoner murdered them." Whitmore opened the briefcase, revealing USB drives, folders of documents, and a handwritten note. Gabriel managed to hide these before the Volkovs locked down his access. "He wants you to know he had nothing to do with the assassination. More than that, he wants to help you destroy the people responsible." Thomas, now walking with only a slight limp, moved closer to examine the contents. This could all be fabricated. A way to draw her out. "It could be," Whitmore agreed. "Which is why Gabriel included this." He handed Isabella the handwritten note. The writing was shaky but legible. "Isabella, Julian showed me your engagement photo. He said you made him believe in second chances. I tried to save him. I failed. Let me help you finish what he started. The Volkovs killed your family 10 years ago on my father's order. He wanted to expand into your territory even then. Julian never knew. I only found the records last month."
"I'm sorry."
"Gabriel." Isabella read it twice, her hands steady despite the rage building in her chest. The Marcellis had been planning her family's destruction for a decade. "What's on the drives?" she asked. Whitmore pulled out a folder. Complete blueprints of 3 Volkov warehouse operations in Brooklyn and Queens. Names of 14 city officials on their payroll. Bank accounts tracking $200 million in laundered money. Security protocols for the Volkov headquarters in Brighton Beach. And a recording of Gabriel's father negotiating the terms of your assassination with Dmitry Volkov himself. Victor was already examining the documents, his expression darkening. "If this is real, it's everything. We could dismantle their entire operation." "It's too convenient," Thomas insisted. "They let him keep evidence this damaging? Let him smuggle it out through his lawyer? This is bait." "Of course it's bait," Isabella said. "The question is whether we take it anyway." She looked at Whitmore. "What does Gabriel want in return?" "Extraction within 48 hours. After that, the Volkovs are moving him to an undisclosed location in Russia. If he doesn't cooperate fully by then, they've promised to make an example of him." Whitmore's professional mask slipped slightly. "He's being held in the east wing of the estate, 4th floor, 6 guards minimum. They're using him as a hostage to control the business, but his usefulness has an expiration date." Thomas shook his head. "This is suicide. Even with the blueprints, we'd be walking into a fortified position with unknown variables. We'd be walking in with intelligence their own prisoner provided," Isabella countered. "Gabriel knows the estate, knows their procedures. And more importantly, he has something we need, proof that his father ordered my family's murders. I want that recording." "You want revenge," Thomas said. "I want justice." Isabella met his eyes. "There's a difference. Gabriel tried to save Julian. He documented the conspiracy. Now he's offering us everything we need to win. If we leave him there to die because we're afraid of a trap, we're no better than the people who killed your sister." The room fell silent. Finally, Thomas exhaled slowly. "When do we move?" "Tomorrow night," Isabella said. "Before they can transfer him. Before they realize we know." She looked at Whitmore. "Tell Gabriel to be ready. And tell him if this is a trap, he won't live long enough to regret it." They worked through the night, spreading Gabriel's blueprints across the conference table alongside satellite imagery and surveillance photos. Victor had assembled a strike team of 12, Isabella's most trusted soldiers, men and women who'd been with her since the beginning. But as the planning session stretched past midnight and Victor left to brief the team, Isabella found herself alone with Thomas, staring at the layout of the Marsetti estate. "You should sit," she said, noticing him favoring his left side. "Your wounds are barely healed."
Ai fine.
But he lowered himself into a chair anyway, exhaustion finally showing on his face. "Tell me about the night your family died." Isabella looked up, surprised.
No one asked her that.
No one dared. "Why?" "Because you're asking me to trust you with my life tomorrow. And I want to know who I'm following into hell." "Fair enough." Isabella poured 2 glasses of whiskey from the bottle she kept in the cabinet, sliding one across to Thomas. "I was 22. My father had just started grooming me to take over negotiations with our suppliers, unusual for a daughter in our world, but he said I had a better head for business than my brothers." She took a drink, the burn familiar. "The Volkovs and 2 other families coordinated the hit. Ambushed us at my brother's wedding. 50 guests. They killed 38. How did you survive?" "My father pushed me under the head table when the shooting started. Made himself a shield." Isabella's voice remained steady, clinical. She'd told this story so many times in her head that the emotion had calcified into fact. "I lay there for 20 minutes while they executed everyone. Heard my brothers begging. Heard my father die. When it was quiet, I crawled out through their blood and ran." Thomas was silent, his hands wrapped around the glass. "Everyone expected me to disappear, to take the money and vanish. Instead, I spent 3 months tracking down everyone involved. Every shooter, every lookout, every person who knew and stayed silent." She met his eyes. "I killed 11 men personally before I turned 23. The rest I had killed. Then I took over what was left of my father's organization and made it clear that anyone who challenged me would face the same fate. That's how you became the Viper. That's how I survived." Isabella set down her glass. "Julian thought he could save me from that.
Give me a way out."
I let myself believe it because I was tired of being the monster everyone feared. I wanted to be someone's fiancé, someone's wife, someone normal." Her laugh was bitter. "His family saw exactly what I was trying to hide and used it against me." Thomas was quiet for a moment, then spoke softly. "Sophia and I were at a movie when she got called in to cover someone's shift at the bodega. I told her not to go. Said they were taking advantage of her. We fought about it." He stared at his hands. "She went anyway because she needed the money because she was responsible like that. I was still angry when she texted me she made it there safe. Didn't text back. 2 hours later, she was dead. You couldn't have known. Neither could you. Under that table, you couldn't have saved your family." Thomas looked at her directly. "But we both spent every day since trying to make up for it, didn't we? You by becoming untouchable. Me by hunting the people who made me helpless." Isabella felt something crack in her chest, a wall she'd maintained for 10 years. "Tomorrow, we stop being victims." "Tomorrow," Thomas agreed, raising his glass. "We burn it all down." They drank in silence, 2 survivors bound by blood and purpose, planning an act of vengeance that would either destroy them or set them free. The next 18 hours became a masterclass in controlled chaos. Isabella's organization moved like a machine, every piece falling into place with the precision she'd spent a decade perfecting. She stood in her operations center, a converted warehouse in Red Hook, watching screens display real-time feeds from across the city as her empire mobilized for war. "Teams 1 and 2 are positioned outside the warehouse targets in Brooklyn," Victor reported, pointing to the tactical map. "Team 3 has eyes on the Brighton Beach headquarters. All units ready to move on your signal." Isabella nodded, then turned to the conference room where Thomas was running Gabriel's rescue team through their 3rd drill of the day. She watched through the glass as he moved between the 6 operators she'd selected, correcting positions, timing their movements. Despite his injuries, he moved with surprising authority. The former pre-med student had found his calling. "He's good," Victor said quietly. Natural leader. The team respects him. He should have been a doctor, Isabella replied. Instead, the Volkovs turned him into this. They turned us all into something. Victor pulled up financial reports on his tablet. Speaking of which, the offshore accounts Gabriel identified contained $243 million. The warehouses hold another $60 million in product. If we seize instead of destroy, we could triple your operational capital overnight. Isabella studied the numbers. It was a fortune. Enough to expand into territories she'd only dreamed of, to buy legitimacy the way Julian's family had, to finally build something clean from something dirty. All she had to do was take it instead of burn it. What would you do? She asked Victor. Professionally?
Take the money.
Consolidate power. Use their resources to strengthen our position. He paused. Personally, I'd burn it all and sleep better at night. The door opened and Thomas entered, sweat-soaked from the drill. Team's ready. We can breach the estate in under 4 minutes, extract Gabriel in under 6. If the intelligence is accurate. That's a big if, Victor warned. It's all we have. Thomas looked at Isabella. But there's something we need to discuss. After we get Gabriel out, after we hit the warehouses and the headquarters, what happens to the Volkov's operation? Do we absorb it or eliminate it? Isabella had been avoiding this question all day. She walked to the window overlooking the East River, where shipping containers held fortunes in contraband, where her father had built his empire, where the Volkovs now tried to build theirs. Julian wanted me to go legitimate, she said. Thought I could wash away the blood with charity galas and political donations. His parents proved that lie. They were legitimate, respected, and they still partnered with the Volkovs to murder me. She turned back to face them. Taking the Volkovs' money makes me exactly what Julian's family was, a criminal in expensive clothes. So we destroy it, Thomas said. All of it. All of it means millions in product burning. Operations that employ hundreds of people. Territory that will be absorbed by other families even worse than the Volkovs. Victor's voice was measured. I'm not arguing morality.
I'm arguing practicality.
Then let me be impractical. Isabella's decision crystallized. We destroy the Volkovs completely. Burn their warehouses, freeze their accounts, scatter their soldiers. Send a message that trying to kill me doesn't make you rich. It makes you extinct. Let the other families see what happens when you come for the Viper. Victor absorbed this, then nodded slowly. It'll make you enemies. The families who wanted that territory will blame you for the vacuum. Good. Let them be afraid. Fear keeps people honest. Isabella checked her watch. We move at midnight. Gabriel first, then simultaneous strikes on all Volkov operations. By dawn, Dmitry Volkov will have nothing left but his life. And then I'm taking that too. Thomas smiled, dark and satisfied. Now that's a plan I can follow. Midnight came like a blade falling. Across 3 boroughs, Isabella's forces moved in perfect synchronization, the product of 18 hours of planning compressed into 18 minutes of controlled violence. Team 1 breaching Brooklyn warehouse now. Victor's voice crackled through Isabella's earpiece as she sat in the back of her armored SUV 3 blocks from the Brighton Beach headquarters. Resistance minimal. Charges set. Team 2 entering Queen's facility. Another voice reported. Guards neutralized. Moving to secure the product. Isabella's phone lit up with a text from Thomas. Going in. She watched the security feed from a camera they'd planted near the Marsetti estate as 6 shadows moved through the darkness toward the east wing. Thomas led them with surgical precision. Bolt cutters on the fence, shaped charges on the reinforced door, flashbangs through the windows. The feed went white with the blast, then cleared to show Thomas's team pouring inside. Gunfire erupted. Isabella counted the seconds, her jaw tight. 15.
20.
30. Package secured. Coming out hot. Thomas's text made her exhale. Brooklyn warehouse clear, Victor reported. Detonating in 3, 2, The explosion lit up the night sky, visible even from Brighton Beach. $30 million in heroin and cocaine turned to ash and smoke. Queen's facility clear. Burning now. Isabella stepped out of the SUV, Victor and 4 soldiers flanking her as they walked toward the headquarters, a renovated warehouse that the Volkovs had transformed into a fortress. Except now the fortress had no army. Most of Dmitri's soldiers had been at the warehouses at the money operations, protecting assets that were currently burning. The skeleton crew remaining barely slowed Isabella's advance. They found Dmitri in his office on the 3rd floor, frantically making phone calls, trying to understand how his empire was collapsing in real time. He looked up as Isabella entered, his face going pale. "You," he breathed. "You should be dead. Your mistake was thinking I'd be easy to kill." Isabella walked to his desk, gun in hand, but not yet raised. Julian Marcetti's family thought the same thing. They're all dead now, too. Dmitri's hand moved toward his desk drawer, but Victor put 2 rounds through the wood before he could reach the weapon inside. The Russian crime lord jerked back, clutching his hand, blood streaming between his fingers. 10 years ago, you killed my family at my brother's wedding, Isabella said, her voice cold as winter. You sent my father's finger to me in a box. Tonight, you partnered with the Marcettis to try again. I want you to understand something before you die. You failed.
Not just tonight.
You failed 10 years ago when you left me alive. Your father was weak. Dmitri spat blood. Sentimental. He refused to expand, refused to adapt. He deserved what he got. He was my father. Isabella raised the gun. And you made a mistake thinking his daughter would be easier to break. The first shot hit Dmitri in the chest. The second in the stomach. She let him feel it, let him understand he was dying. The third shot, to the head, was mercy he didn't deserve but she gave anyway. All teams report, Victor said into his radio as smoke detectors began wailing throughout the building. Brooklyn burned. Team 1 clear. Queens burned. Team 2 clear. Money operations hit. Accounts frozen. Team 3 clear. Package delivered. Thomas's voice came through. Gabriel's secure. He's hurt but stable. Coming to your location. Isabella stood over Dmitri Volkov's body, 10 years of rage finally emptied from her chest. The man who'd murdered her family, who'd tried to murder her, who'd killed Thomas's sister and Julian and countless others.
Gone.
Burn it, she told Victor, gesturing to the headquarters. Burn it all. As they walked out into the night, flames rising behind them, Isabella felt something she hadn't felt since before that wedding 10 years ago. Freedom. 18 months later, Isabella stood on the balcony of the Metropolitan Club overlooking Central Park, watching the city that had tried to destroy her now celebrating her success. Inside, 300 guests mingled beneath crystal chandeliers. Politicians, business leaders, community organizers, and carefully selected members of her restructured organization. The gala was raising funds for the Reyes Marcetti Community Development Initiative, a $10 million project rehabilitating neighborhoods that had been neglected by everyone, criminals and politicians alike. Thomas appeared beside her, impeccable in a tuxedo that made him look nothing like the terrified waiter who'd saved her life. The mayor's asking about expanding the program to the Bronx. Victor's got 3 city council members who want private meetings. And Gabriel's looking for you. How does it feel? Isabella asked. Being respectable? Thomas smiled. Strange, but better than hunting ghosts. He'd spent the past year building her security infrastructure into something that operated in daylight: executive protection, corporate security consulting, private investigation. Sophia's killers were dead. He'd found peace in protecting others instead of pursuing revenge. You built something good here. We built it, Isabella corrected. All of us. Inside, Gabriel was talking with a nonprofit director, but his eyes tracked Isabella the moment she entered. 18 months had transformed him too. The hollow-eyed prisoner had become a confident executive, managing the legitimate merger of Marsetti Industries with Isabella's cleaned-up operations. He'd proven his loyalty 100 times over, standing beside her when authorities investigated the Volkov fire, testifying about his family's crimes, helping her navigate the world of legitimate business his parents had tried to keep from her. More than that, he'd proven he saw her completely. Not the monster. Not the victim. Just Isabella. Ladies and gentlemen, Gabriel's voice carried across the room as he stepped to the microphone. Thank you for supporting tonight's initiative. But before we continue, I need to do something I should have done months ago. Isabella's heart stuttered as Gabriel walked toward her, the crowd parting. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box, and the room went silent. Isabella Reyes, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. You survived things that would have destroyed most people. You built an empire from ashes. You saved my life when you had every reason to let me die. You trusted me when trust should have been impossible. He opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the light like fire. My brother loved you for trying to escape your past. I love you for embracing it and building something better. Marry me. Not to legitimize your empire. It doesn't need legitimacy. Marry me because I can't imagine building the future with anyone else. The room held its breath. Isabella felt Thomas's presence behind her, Victor watching from across the room, all the people who'd become her family waiting. She thought of Julian, who'd wanted to save her, of her father, who'd died protecting her, of Sophia and the countless others lost to violence and pride. Yes, she said, and the word felt like a door opening to something she'd stopped believing in. Yes. As Gabriel slipped the ring on her finger and the room erupted in applause, Isabella realized she'd finally found what she'd been searching for. Not escape from who she was. Not redemption from what she'd done. But acceptance from herself and from a man who'd chosen her, knowing everything. Thomas raised his glass from across the room, a silent acknowledgement between survivors. Victor nodded from his position by the door, ever watchful. And Gabriel kissed her while the city lights glittered below, proof that from violence and betrayal, something beautiful could still grow. The viper had become something more. Not softer. Not weaker. But complete. If you enjoyed Isabella's journey from betrayal to triumph, please like this story and subscribe for more intense tales of power, revenge, and unexpected redemption. Your support helps us create more stories that show how strength and vulnerability can coexist. What would you do if your partner's family tried to kill you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every one.